Katczinzki, Ariel Begay, but her first name is hard to pronounce, so everyone calls her Ariel.
Valia Cisco looks at faded photographs of her older sister every once in a while and remembers these special moments forever frozen in time.
She was beautiful, she was kind, she's very smart, and smarter than me.
Ariel was about to make her way in this world. She graduated from a medical assistant program and had dreams of becoming a nurse, but that would never happen. She went missing in July 2017, last seen leaving her mom's house.
We tried calling her phone, it would ring, it would just go to voicemail. Then eventually it would just go straight to voicemail.
They filed a missing persons report with Navajo Nation police and held search parties. 3 months later, Ariel's remains were found in a canyon on the reservation. Valia says officials believe she was murdered.
Her killer's still out there.
Yes, yes.
The Navajo Nation is vast, spanning 3 states. It has a population of roughly 350,000 people, with small communities peppered throughout. With so much open space, there's plenty of room for secrets.
It's starting to be more and more every week. There's, individuals going missing.
The founder of Navajo Nation Missing Persons Group says that she's tracking 40 cases that go back to the 1950s. She says it's a problem that many people here on the reservation are talking about, but she wonders, is anyone listening? Ariel's case brought Mesky and Valia together. They are now on a mission to highlight the growing problem of missing and murdered Native people. They pass out flyers of the missing and hold vigils. Mesky believes there are hundreds more cases that need attention, and those doing the killing think they can get away with it because of the lack of investigative resources. The FBI investigates the most serious kinds of crime in Indian country, including murder, while local authorities look into missing person cases.
Why is this happening?
I really couldn't tell you. I don't think anybody can really tell you why it's happening. There's suspicion of human trafficking.
The problem is widespread in Native communities across the country. It's caught the attention of federal lawmakers.
This matter involves Indian children, youth, men, and women, and affects tribal communities across the country.
The U.S. Senate held a committee meeting with Indian country leaders in December to find solutions to the missing and murdered problem.
To implore this committee to intervene to stop the alarming rates of our tribal members who turn up missing or murdered.
Navajo Nation Council delegate Amber Canez-Balcrati is on the task force.
On the nation, what we're finding is because of our jurisdictions and the complications, victims of violence, in particular murdered and missing women and girls, fall through the cracks when we look at all these intergovernmental agencies.
She says there's a big disconnect among tribal, state, and federal authorities when sharing information, and that needs to be addressed. She says it should also not be just assumed that people are leaving on their own.
What we see, and in listening to the stories, in particular with human trafficking victims, we see that there was some type of coercion, exploitation, some type of shame, fear. And so the missing, and especially with social media and access in terms of the internet, we see very few cases where individuals just want to disappear, just want to leave on their own.
Along with more communication training, she says Native communities are going to need sustainable funding to address these issues head on.
We are not numbers, we are people. We are here, and we should not be forgotten.
Mesky says they meet every month now with tribal officials to go over missing and murdered cases, an effort that began very recently. Valia says the stress of her sister's mysterious death took a toll on her mother's health, and she has since passed away. So she's taken on the task of reaching out to authorities constantly to learn any new developments in her sister's case. For now, only questions remain.
Just wait patiently waiting for the local authorities to serve justice and, get this person, this dangerous person away from other women, children, and family members.
Colton Schoen, KOB Eyewitness News 4.
One of New Mexico's newest federal lawmakers is digging into the big problem we told you about earlier this month.
Many Native American women in New Mexico are missing. Some of them are murdered. And as 4 investigator Colton Schoen reports, Congresswoman Deb Haaland says she's taking action.
We brought you Ariel Begay's story in early January. She was a woman from the Navajo Nation who went missing in July of 2017. Her body was found in a canyon just a few miles away from her home A few months later, her family says she was murdered, yet her killer is still out there. She has received no justice. Now, the family has been working with the Navajo Nation Missing Persons Group to raise awareness about this growing problem of missing and murdered Native women. And here's where Representative Deb Haaland comes in. She says ending this crisis is one of her top priorities. So we're asking her, how?
Oh, it's devastating. It's devastating because I have a daughter. And every time that happens, I just imagine my daughter being in that place and me getting that phone call.
Representative Deb Haaland, one of the first Native American women elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, says federal lawmakers are waking up to the issue of the high rate of Indigenous women going missing and being murdered. KOB reported how this problem is affecting Native communities in our own state. Ariel Begay went missing on the Navajo Nation in July 2017. Her remains were found a few months later. Tribal advocates say because of the remoteness of the reservation and not enough investigative resources, many of these cases go unsolved. This is happening on tribal lands across the country.
Why is this happening?
I really couldn't tell you. I don't think anybody can really tell you why it's happening. There's suspicion of human trafficking.
Late last year, the U.S. Senate unanimously passed the bill known as Savannah's Act in response to Native woman Savannah LaFontaine Graywin's murder. Officials say she went missing for months. Her body was later found wrapped in plastic in a North Dakota river. The bill would make it easier for tribes to report missing Indigenous people to a federal database and create guidelines for investigating these kinds of cases. Even though Savannah's Act passed the Senate, it did not pass the House.
That was before we had a Democratic majority. So now that we're in the majority, I'm confident we'll be able to get a bill passed in the House.
Beyond Savannah's bill, Haaland says that she'd also like to introduce her own legislation that addresses investigative gaps.
We need training in all of these law enforcement agencies that deal with Indian country so that they know what to do initially, because every day that goes on that a woman is missing, it gets harder and harder and harder to find her.
Connectivity is also an issue. Haaland says it's something to take seriously.
We know that New Mexico's rural communities a lot of times don't have cell phone service, don't have internet service, so there might be somebody who's a victim of a crime and their cell phone doesn't work. They're not getting any service at the location they're at. So that's another issue that I know we truly need to change in this state.
The issue of money also comes up. How much funding would be appropriated for tribes to tackle this issue? What's enough? And how will we be able to check on whether it's working? We'll keep following this issue and check in with Representative Haaland and legislative filings to see if any bills regarding missing and murdered Indigenous people get passed. I'm Colton Schoen for Investigate.